Very good. Well, let's get kicked off today. Um, we're going to be talking about how to turn government legislation on tax and compliance issues into leads. So, how to use that kind of stuff for your marketing. Now, just a bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions for me today, you can use the Q&A panel. I might answer those as we go along, but more than likely going to stick around at the end and answer those. And if you have any technical issues, Camilla's on the line too. She'll be happy to try and get you sorted out as well. So either use the chat or the Q&A to do that. But let's get into it. I'm going to keep this like a really short session today. Just want it to be nice and punchy so I can just give you some really good information that you can take away and use. So is compliance dead? Now, it's a bit of a boring debate to me that, goes around in circles, and there's various kind of experts or so-called experts talking to you that stuff all the time. So I don't want to get into that debate, but in my view, look, compliance is not dead, right? It's not going to be dead for a long time, but it is really boring for business owners. So in terms of using it, or how I see it used a lot for marketing, it's used in a very boring way. But the reality is it's not dead because, what I hire a bookkeeper and an accountant to do all of Bizink's payroll, sales tax, annual accounts, because, there's not a big compliance burden in New Zealand where we're based, but, we don't want to do that ourselves. So we hire an accountant and a bookkeeper to do that. And I'm sure for most of you listening today, you're doing a bunch of compliance work for your clients as well. So if that's what your clients and prospects are hiring you to do, it makes sense to use that in your marketing, right? But the trouble is that a lot of people don't want to read about that stuff. And I'm sure you found that, your clients, although they should, we say they should be interested in this stuff, they don't read about it. They don't take interest in it. So although that's why they're hiring you, there's that kind of paradox there that they don't want to know about that stuff. And that's why I think some firms use tax and compliance content the wrong way, and then they get a bad result in terms of marketing. But I'm going to show you today there is a way to use compliance type content in your marketing that actually attracts people. So before we get into that, a little bit about me. So my name's Matt Wilkinson. I'm the founder and CEO of Bizink, and we work with several hundred accounting and bookkeeping firms worldwide, helping them with their websites and their marketing. I've been doing this since 2010, and I've been a marketer since the late 1990s. And this is what I do in my spare time. Nice and cold here in New Zealand at the moment, so that's what I'll be doing at the weekend. I'll be going into the mountains and trying to climb some ice and snow just like that. Right, so let's get into the session today. So I'm going to split the session into two halves. So the first half, which I'm just going to get into now, is kind of like a bit of theory and background to what I'm talking about. But then I'm going to show you some real examples of accountants and bookkeepers doing this stuff, because I know that's what's most valuable to you guys. So the first bit of background is, look, let's start with a bit of psychology, and it's pain versus pleasure, and how you can use that to your advantage. So humans are largely motivated by greed and self-interest. Now that might sound a bit dark of a way to start the webinar, but we can dress this up any way we like. But the overwhelming evidence in the world is that people don't act altruistically. They act for themselves. Now, you can think that's good or bad or whatever, but accepting that will really help you become a better marketer. Your clients and your prospects are only interested in what's in it for them. So, when it comes to tax or compliance, what they really care about is, does this help me or does it hurt me? Pain or pleasure. They're the two things that they care about. So I'm guessing you've all heard of risk aversion or being risk averse. Has anyone heard of loss aversion? Just type yes or no into the chat if you've heard of loss aversion. So this is a psychological theory that's pretty commonly accepted. Came up with in the 70s. Yeah, got a couple of no's there. So what loss aversion is the theory that people feel the loss of losing, say, $100 greater than the satisfaction of gaining $100. So that's what loss aversion is. People will do more to avoid losing something than they will to try and gain something. And so you can use that in your marketing because, well, let's face it, like the government isn't often giving you stuff up to the business owners. It's often taking stuff off you. And business owners don't like to lose stuff. Now, people still like gaining stuff, right? So you can use the loss thing or the gain thing in your marketing. But often when I see compliance content done, what people do is just explain, what a tax law is. And nobody cares about that, right? Like, that's why they're hiring you is to know about that stuff. Me as a business owner, I don't really care about something unless it hurts me or I can gain from it. And so, that's the first test you should apply to your marketing content. Does this help or hurt my audience? Why should they be interested in it? Humans are self-interested, so they're going to be interested in one of those things. If you're just giving people like tax news or tax facts, and you often see that on accounting websites, nobody reads that stuff. Nobody reads it. So some firms have understood the power of pain or loss in marketing, and they try and use that, I guess, fear to sell on. They just share bad news, but the problem is they share the bad news, but don't tell somebody what to do about it. So they could be saying like, "Oh, the government has increased dividend tax, and you're going to get poorer." Well, why are you telling me that? You've just made me feel bad. And fear in marketing, it can work. I would say you've got to be very careful about using fear in marketing, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But it only works if you also offer a solution. So just making people scared it's not a good thing. Imagine if you went to the doctor, right? And the doctor's like, "Hey, you've got a terrible disease," and then the doctor gets up and walks out. Not very good. You don't want the bad news. You want the bad news plus, what can I do about it? So you've got to offer a solution. And it's best if you make that solution really simple. So again, a mistake I see is sometimes people like they do a post, they say, "Well, here's the thing that we can help you with," but they go into too much detail and try and try and really complicate it. So what people want is a simple solution. People always want a simple solution. So like we've helped lots of people like you with this. Get in touch. So the second point to remember when using tax and compliance content in marketing is, if you're going to be the bearer of bad news, always put a simple solution on the table as well, because solving is selling. Solving is selling. That's it. That's an important thing to remember, not just for this, but across all of your marketing. So, if we're talking about, what could often be bad news to people, you got to be really careful with the tone of your marketing, because if you're too negative, people just switch off. I'm sure you've all been surprised how you've got clients who will just ignore problems that are right in front of them. But we all do the same in our daily lives, right? Dangers of, say, something like smoking have been known for 70 years, yet still 20% of people worldwide smoke. Loads of examples in the news every day: climate change, obesity, overspending on credit. All of these things, it's well known that they're not good, yet people keep doing them. So, the message is not getting through. People don't respond well to negativity. So if you've got to deliver bad news, you actually have to do it in a positive way. So in this kind of content I'm talking about, keep your tone upbeat. Humor works really well. You'll see some examples of that with real firms later on. And back to the last point, you've always got to offer a solution. So don't just be completely negative. Now, you might be thinking, what's the point in marketing about tax and compliance when the government is doing that as well? They're trying to tell business owners about this stuff. But governments suck at marketing, right? They really suck at marketing. In preparing for this webinar, I had the dubious pleasure of going to read some content from places like the IRS, the IRD, the ATO, and the HMRC. So, tax bodies of US, New Zealand, Australia, and the UK. Now, when I said read content from these places, I was looking on their websites. I actually found it incredibly difficult to read it because, I'm sure you read more of this stuff than me, but it's like a weird skill that governments have got to turn, they can write English that it's technically correct. It kind of makes sense, but you read it and it just doesn't go in. It's so boring or weird the way they write it. I find myself rereading this stuff, just doesn't go in. So I think you all know what I'm talking about there, right? Governments are really poor communicators a lot of the time. And the good thing about that for you is that gives you a chance to communicate better than them. And to prove they're not good at this, again, preparing for this webinar, we're going to talk about something called Making Tax Digital, which if you're in the UK, you'll have heard a lot about. And we're going to see an example of that in just a minute. But Making Tax Digital, it's a big deal for small business owners. They've all got to get involved with it. But the ICAW, so the UK Chartered Accounting Body, did a survey about this. And six months before this was meant to come in, Making Tax Digital, 40% of business owners didn't even know what it was. And it was coming in 6 months later. So that's how bad a job the UK government had done about communicating that. And I'm sure you'd have a similar tale with another government initiative wherever you're listening from today. So governments really suck at marketing. That's an opportunity for you to fill that void when they announce this legislation that affects business owners. You can do kind of what they should be doing. And the second thing there is people trust you more. It's a cliche that you're the trusted advisors to business, but it's a cliche because it's true. There's countless studies to back that up. So, you should be using that status and take advantage of the fact that people will actually listen to you. So what I want to do now is just get into some real examples of accounting firms using legislation and turning it into leads. But I thought before I do that, I would actually give you an outside example because sometimes, I think we see you guys are so close to the content matter that we're talking about today, it can be harder to see it. And what I thought I'd do before I show you accountants and bookkeepers would be kind of how we've done this at Biz Inc. And that might just kind of be like a different example that can make it a bit clearer. So here's an example of something that we did in 2015 and 2016, where Google brought in a thing called a mobile friendly test. And basically what it meant was that sites that weren't, well, it's still true now, is that sites that aren't mobile friendly are penalized. So if your site isn't mobile friendly, then you're not going to feature in Google's mobile search listings. So that's like over 50% of searches you'd be missing out on. And, so you don't exist for people on mobile. So it's quite a big deal, right? And Google's kind of like the government of the internet. So, this is kind of like compliance for the world that we live in Biz Inc. So we're like, well, we need to tell people about this. And so here's an example of an email campaign that we sent out. And we did this, we did blogs, we mentioned it in webinars, we did it on social media. So we really got this message out that Google's going to do something that is going to hurt you, but we're going to show you a solution, right? So there's this mobile friendly test you can take. If your site's okay, obviously you're good. If it fails, here's some things that you can go away and do. And obviously one of those was to talk to us. And guess what? We can sell you a mobile friendly website. And we got a bunch of leads from that and a bunch of clients. We weren't trying to over dramatize the issue. We just laid out the facts and gave instructions on how to fix them. And that was a campaign that we ran for several months. Same with something that happened in 2017 with Google. They started showing insecure in the browser if websites didn't have an SSL certificate. So, that's another thing that we could run a very similar campaign on. Google's going to do this. They're kind of like the government of the internet. You have to play by their rules. Here's what you can do. So, be on the lookout for issues like this affecting your clients. Now, what's the government doing in your country that's going to affect your clients, and you can talk to them about. So let's have a look at some real examples. And by the way, if your site isn't mobile friendly or doesn't have an SSL certificate, then feel free to drop me a line. Just type like contact into the chat, and we'll reach out to you after the webinar. So what I'm actually going to do here is jump online and show you some real websites. And so the first one that I had a look at was something called Single Touch Payroll in Australia. So you'll be well aware of this if you're in Australia. And this is something that's just about to come in at the end of the financial year for businesses under with under 20 staff. It's already come in for bigger businesses. And so this is going to be a big deal. It's going to affect a lot of business owners. And this is the ATO, one of their pages about this, right? And this is just to prove that governments really suck at marketing. So they got this video, which is okay. To find out more, visit our website, click, page doesn't work. So this is the kind of level of stuff we're looking at here. I mean, how much marketing budget might those guys have? And they can't even get the page to work. But, like I said, you guys can take up the slack here. And this is what one of our clients did. So it's a firm called Healthy Business Finances, bookkeeping and financial business advice firm. And they did a bunch of stuff around single touch payroll. So you can see they've got a blog here. Click through to the blog. And, are you ready for single touch payroll? So, I talked about making the tone not too negative. They've turned it into a bit of humor there, playing on the fact that business owners probably don't know about this. And so, kind of like a nice light tone to the single touch payroll post, and lots of calls to action, right? Look, talk to us, don't leave it any longer. So they're basically offering a solution as well. Explain it, but they say, well, look, talk to us about it. And they've done a bunch of marketing around this. You can also see some stuff here on Facebook, and this is just one post that they've done. So this is just from yesterday, right? Is like single touch payroll is coming up now. Get in touch with us. So this is obviously a little bit more urgent because like the deadline is coming right up. So the next example, I want to jump over to the UK and a firm called Telford's. It's another one of Bizzing's clients. And Telford's would definitely be what you called an advisory firm, very much in that camp. Yet they would still use what I would call this compliance or tax content to do marketing, because that's what their clients are hiring them to do as well. So this is something here about using about understanding a dividend tax. So the UK government brought in a new tax on dividends, and so they explain that. So this is obviously, we're talking about the loss aversion. There's a bit of a pain happening here. Your dividend is now going to get taxed at 7.5%. And a lot, having run a business in the UK, big way that UK business directors will pay themselves a low salary and then pay on dividends on top of that, and that's normally pay themselves through dividends. So this is obviously what the government's trying to hit here. So it's going to affect a lot of people. And what Telfords have done, really explain this in detail. It's a really good deep dive post. Nice kind of call to action here in the middle to get their newsletter going, and really explained it. And what I like that they've done, they've actually given some real world examples here. So, bring it home to the people reading it, what might actually happen, how this is actually going to affect them in pounds and pence. So some examples, really deep dive into it, and the call to action, like, we can help you here. So offering that solution as well. And a similar post here on payment on account. So there's something here that could trip people up, and they've done the same thing here. Is it's given some really good examples. I think this is something that's well worth copying. This bringing it home to people that this is how it could happen in your business. And again, they're promoting that on social media. So just as a general thing, repurpose your content. A blog post is good, but you've got to get people to read that. So not just in your blog post, you'll want to post that on social media. So places like Facebook and LinkedIn, and things like emails as well, email newsletters. So email newsletters get opened. For our clients, the open rate is about 40% on average. That's compared to like 27% open rate. On MailChimp, that's their best. MailChimp's best performing category is 27%. So people read emails from their accountants. Great way to get this information out. Final example is Wise Advice, who are based in Auckland, New Zealand. So they work with lots of rental property owners, and in the last little while, the New Zealand government has introduced a bit of legislation that's kind of affecting what rental property owners used to be able to do, which is offset losses against things like income tax. So this post goes into detail about what's going to happen there. This again would affect a lot of people, but they're giving a solution, and they're also, there's lots of bullet points which explain exactly how it could affect people, and the call to action at the bottom so that they can get in touch. So these examples I've shown you so far has mainly been on blogs and social media, but you can do this content across all types of different mediums. And Brad, who's the owner of Wise Advice, they even do this stuff on YouTube. They create videos, so you can see the video here on screen. Payday filing is another example of something in New Zealand where there's a regulatory change that anyone who's got payroll has got to do something different from 1st of April. So they've created a video about that. So another great way to get this content out in front of clients and in front of prospects. So summing up, I promised this would be a nice short and punchy webinar. I didn't want to keep this long. I just want to say, look, here's some of the background, and here's some real examples of how you can turn that legislation type content into lead generating content. And what you have to do, you've got to try and make compliance sound interesting, right? Business owners don't love compliance, but they do love winning, and they hate losing. We talked about loss aversion. So make it about them. Make it about them. What's in it for me? We talked about that. People always think about that, is what's in it for me. So you've got to make it something that's either going to help them or hurt them. And then you offer the solution. Because we talked about how solving is selling. You're trying to, generally compliance is a challenge for business owners, and you can be the solution to that challenge, and that's how you sell. You don't just want to be the bearer of bad news. Keep things positive. People shut down to negativity, and so keep your messaging nice and positive, and that's going to be much more effective. And finally, I wouldn't be a marketer if I didn't try and address your challenges and offer a solution, just like I've been telling you to do. So look, quickly, most firms who we work with, they really love numbers. They're not so keen on writing on words. So if that sounds like you, and you want great content like I was showing you with some of our clients, then we should talk. So if you're interested in talking about how we can help you with content and marketing, just type contact into the chat and we'll make sure that we get back to you. So I'm going to stick around for some questions. So if you want to use the Q&A panel to ask any questions, I'm happy to stick around and do that for you. If you've got to go now, thanks very much for making the time to come along. But if you've got any questions, feel free to use the Q&A panel. So I've got one question that's come in, which is, what places should you post this kind of content? Where should, what mediums should you use to post this content? And I'd say, like, I wouldn't restrict it to anything, but a few of the places that I think will work really well for you. So you've seen blogs. Well, blogs is a good place to do it. It keeps your website up to date, and because your website's like the center of your marketing world, I'd say posting something like on a blog, like I've shown you, is good, but you're not going to get that many people just turn up and read your blog. So you've got to get people to there, and so you got to distribute that content. The way I would distribute the content would be, first of all, email. So, email is just such a good channel. I would think you'd be getting, like, pretty high open rates if you're anything like our clients. Send email newsletters, send email blasts out to clients and prospects. Secondly, I'd be putting it on social media. So you saw those posts on Facebook. I would also be looking to do that stuff on LinkedIn. That'd probably be it, to be fair. I don't think Twitter works that well for most firms, so I'll be putting it out there on LinkedIn and Facebook. The other thing would be, face to face. When you're meeting your clients, if these things are really pressing and you need to help them, then I'll be talking to them like that. And then maybe even events, or you could do a webinar like this. So events work really, really well. Any opportunity to get face time with clients and prospects can be really effective. So got any more questions coming in? Just use that Q&A panel and I'll be happy to answer those. I can see one more question's just come in, which is, where's the best place to find the information for these kind of posts? So I think 3 places that I would look would be, number one is obviously like the government websites. I mean, that sometimes the tone is a bit dry, as talked about earlier, but the blog of your local tax department obviously has that information on it. But usually where it's packaged up a bit better, 2 other places I would look would be your professional body is obviously publishing this stuff out, and maybe like software vendors like a Xero or QuickBooks. They often do good content around these kind of issues. Well, I can't see any more questions coming in, so thanks very much for making the time to attend today's session. We'll send out a recording by tomorrow. So if you want to watch it again, it'll be there. And if you'd like us to help you with any aspect of your website or your marketing, just drop us a line through the website, bizinconline.com. That just leaves me to say thanks very much for coming along today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.